$93 billion, that's not just a budget or a stimulus, it's a full-scale legalized looting of your tax dollars, approved by a man who wasn't even awake while you were trying to pay your heating bills this winter. They were rapidly approving billion-dollar climate grants, many bearing identical signatures, duplicate timestamps, and in some cases, no paperwork at all. We now have proof that dozens of federal grant approvals have the exact same signature stroke down to the last pixel, not just similar or close, but completely identical. And some of these urgent, fast-tracked files went directly to Stacey Abrams' operation without passing even the most basic compliance checks, no address, no business plan, nothing. So, who was signing these? Because it definitely wasn't the man whose name appears on the ink. That's where Byron Donald's investigation begins. A fluorescent light flickered overhead as Byron stepped into the climate-controlled archives of the Federal Grant Clearance Center. Thin folders lined the metal shelves, each stamped and indexed by hand, no headlines, no speeches, just paperwork and the truth waiting to be uncovered. Who's the senior analyst for Biden-era fast-tracked grants? Byron asked without slowing down. A woman appeared from behind a server rack, her badge hanging around her neck. Linda Ramos, compliance chief, that'd be me, or what's left of me after auditing that mess. Good. I need everything you have on renewable disbursements from November to January, especially anything with the president's signature. Linda didn't hesitate. You want anomalies or volume? Both. And keep it simple. She led him to the scanning room, where monitors displayed rows of scanned presidential approvals. Here's where it gets interesting, she said, opening a folder labeled Climate Phase 4 Urgent. We flagged 37 approvals in this batch, all with identical stroke patterns. Identical as in copied? Byron asked. Worse, digitally cloned. Same origin point, tilt, and pressure. These weren't signed, they were stamped. A voice spoke from the corner. Cal Parker, systems analyst. We ran forensic imaging and overlaid all 37 signatures, they match pixel for pixel. Statistically impossible unless a fixed signature matrix was used. Byron leaned closer. So you're telling me someone digitally forged the president's signature? Linda nodded. And it gets worse. Look at this one. She brought up another flagged file, Approval ID 119845A, Fair Fight Energy Cooperative. Wait, Byron said. Isn't Fair Fight Stacey Abrams' Georgia-based group? They requested $138 million for retrofitting in counties without power lines. Byron squinted at the timestamp. It was approved in just 42 hours. Linda exhaled. No hearings, no questions, no verification. Who signed? She rotated the monitor. Joseph R. Biden Jr. Byron stared at the signature, then checked Biden's public schedule for that week. It was completely empty. That's not negligence, he muttered. That's deliberate orchestration. The room grew silent. Byron stood, grabbed his access code, and told Cal, pull every file with that signature and export it clean and printable. Then to Linda, thank you. What you've given me could blow this whole thing wide open. He stepped out into the cold DC air, pulled out his phone, and dialed. Get me the governor of Georgia, he said quietly. If this is real, it's no longer just mismanagement. It's coordinated laundering, wrapped in green tape, and signed with the presidential pen. When Byron Donald stepped out into the chilly February air, he wasn't just carrying a pile of suspicious signatures. He was holding a live wire, one end tangled in Washington's bureaucracy, the other sparking somewhere deep in Georgia. Every warning sign, every digital irregularity, every suspiciously fast approval pointed to one name, Fair Fight. And every lead from Fair Fight led to one woman, Stacey Abrams. The issue wasn't merely the file's existence. The real problem was that it was rushed through with White House-level clearance in just 42 hours, bearing the president's signature on a day he wasn't seen near a pen. Byron didn't want more warning signs, he needed to get to Georgia. So he made the call. And that call brought him here. The room was small, warm, and a bit too polished, precisely the kind of setting designed to appear flawless. At the center, Governor Brian Kemp sat facing a man in a blue windbreaker with a badge clipped to his belt. Behind them, folders lined the table, most marked EPA Phase 4 Emergency Grant. A large screen flickered on. Byron's face appeared on the feed from Washington. "All right," he said, his voice steady, calm, and cutting. "Let's discuss what $2 billion can buy in Georgia these days." Kemp leaned back. "We're still trying to figure that out ourselves." The field investigator, Tom Reyes, opened a file. Item 1. A solar cooperative in Jenkins County got $18 million to install panels in a community with no grid access. Byron's tone sharpened. No grid. No power lines. No substations. No usage records. Nothing. The town technically no longer exists. Population 0. Kemp scoffed. That's not incompetence. That's laundering with a tan. Tom nodded. Item 2, $42 million went to a program called Democracy-Powered Energy Equity. No official incorporation, no board, but the address traced back to a former Fair Fight campaign office. Byron leaned closer to the screen. "Do we have a signature?" Tom slid a document toward the camera. The signature matched the digital ones from D.C., Joseph R. Biden Jr., dated January 9, 2025. Kemp frowned. Wasn't that the week he was supposedly receiving treatment? Byron didn't flinch. He wasn't seen publicly for 13 days straight, yet his pen was busy. Kemp narrowed his eyes. This was rubber stamped from the top. Tom added, "And every document has a little red box labeled urgent fast-track clearance, like they expected questions later." Byron spoke slowly and quietly. "Then someone better explain this now." A knock came at the door. A staffer appeared. "Sir, Miss Abrams has arrived, and she brought counsel." Kemp stood. "Let's see if the champion of the people can explain a ghost town filled with solar panels." Byron nodded once. "Record everything." The door opened. Stacey Abrams entered, composed, confident, and completely unfazed. "Governor, gentlemen," she said. "I hear you have questions about how I'm helping my state." Kemp's voice was tight. "We have more than questions, ma'am. We have numbers. And they don't add up." Stacey smiled, sharp and polished. "Then maybe your math is off." Byron didn't react. "No, Miss Abrams. The problem isn't the math. It's the signature." The signature claimed Joe Biden approved every dollar while he was still in a hospital gown. The room fell silent. Stacey's smile remained steady. "Maybe you should take that up with Joe," Byron said, leaning back in his chair in Washington, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Oh, we will. But you're getting closer, and I don't skip steps," she replied, pausing just long enough to convey something meaningful. "Neither do I." The screen faded, but the investigation was just heating up. The Georgia file didn't simply look like a setup, it reeked of a coordinated scheme, rushed approvals, perfect political timing, and a signature that showed up everywhere except where it really mattered. The deeper Byron Donalds dug, the clearer one fact became: Joe Biden wasn't running the White House. Someone else was. Someone holding the pen, calling the shots, and shielding operations while the commander-in-chief was off script, off camera, and by all appearances, off his game. Now armed with subpoena power, Byron was no longer hunting shadows. He was hunting names. The air inside the White House records archive was cold and metallic, appropriate, Byron thought, for a room filled with bureaucrats' fingerprints, playing God behind frosted glass. He entered holding the subpoenaed batch from the office of the staff secretary. At the long conference table sat Mike Donen, Jill Biden, Annie Tomasini, and Anthony Bernal, the unelected quartet everyone suspected. Byron slammed the top folder onto the table louder than expected. "Let's talk about signatures." Jill Biden crossed her legs calmly, a silk scarf neatly tucked at her collar. "If you're looking for a gotcha moment, Congressman, this isn't it." Byron didn't flinch. "Ma'am, I want accountability, not theatrics. That comes later. He turned to Donen. Mike, between October 30th and January 10th, you chair at least 5 closed-door sessions on fiscal disbursements, none of which included the president. True? Donen leaned back. I led coordination meetings. The president was always informed. Was he conscious when informed? No answer, because according to this, Byron said, lifting a physician's summary, your informed president was sedated on lorazepam and dexamethasone during 3 of those sessions. Jill's voice sharpened. He was under treatment. That doesn't mean he wasn't functioning. Functioning? Byron stepped forward. Then why were you, Dr. Biden, listed as the final signature authority on 2 internal memos dated November 19th and December 7th? Jill smiled. Those were coordination documents. Symbolic sign-offs. Symbolic? Byron snapped. You fast-tracked billions in federal funds with a pen that wasn't yours, from an office that wasn't yours, for a president who wasn't lucid. That's not symbolic, that's a cover-up operation. He turned to Bernal. Mr. Bernal, you and Ms. Tomasini scheduled the president's movements, right? Bernal nodded stiffly. Yes. Byron pulled out a log. Explain this. On November 28th, Joe Biden appeared in a pre-recorded segment addressing solar grants. That same day, at 9:47 a.m., he was recorded receiving an injection of Mazolam in the East Wing medical suite. Tomasini interrupted, voice tense. We made sure he appeared alert for key moments. 5 minutes was enough. The rest was handled by staff. Byron stepped closer. Handled by staff? He looked at Donen. So who really made the call to greenlight $93 billion in under 3 months? Donen's eyes narrowed. The process was collective. No, Byron said. The cover-up was collective, but the decision was yours. He slid a printed transcript across the table, a staff meeting from December 14th, obtained via whistleblower. Byron read aloud, he doesn't need to be in the room. We've got autopin, optics, and 5 minutes of footage a day. That's all America needs. Keep the cameras tight and the calendar tighter. He let the words hang. Jill Biden finally broke the silence. We were protecting him and the country. No, Byron said, expression hard. You were protecting power and yourselves. He pocketed the transcript, turned, and walked to the door, then paused. I don't care. No matter how many scarves you ironed or how many West Wing meetings you endured with a smile, the Republic doesn't survive on sympathy or tea. He nodded to the security team waiting outside. They would escort you out, closing the door behind you, and with that, the illusion that Joseph R. Biden Jr. was actually running anything vanished. The West Wing had spoken, not with bravery or regret, but with the cold, calculating mindset of bureaucrats who believed they could escape blame. They acknowledged the meetings, the fast-tracking, the staged 5-minute photo ops featuring a sedated, silent man, and then they stamped his name on documents worth more than the GDP of small countries. But what they refused to admit, because no one dared say it aloud, was who actually signed those documents. The president wasn't merely absent, he was incapacitated, and someone else was moving his hand or controlling the pen. The question of who authorized $14 billion while Biden was medically unconscious was about to be answered, not with theory or accusations, but with video evidence. The hearing room inside the Government Accountability Office resembled a war room more than a briefing space. At the front, Byron Donald stood beneath 2 enormous projection screens. To his left sat the Secretary of Energy, anxious but prepared. To his right, a woman in red, composed, cold, and calculating, Jill Biden. Next to her, in a folder on Byron's podium, was the one piece of evidence no one could deny. The tape. Byron cleared his throat and silence fell over the room. We've heard defenses. We've studied memos. We've tracked signatures through 3 states and 2 agencies. But today, we're not asking questions. He pressed a button. We're presenting proof. The screens came alive, January 10th, 2025, 11:14 a.m. On the left, a close-up of a digital document authorizing $14 billion in clean energy projects, signed by Joseph R. Biden Jr. On the right, surveillance footage from inside the East Wing medical suite. A nurse leaned over a hospital bed. Biden lay motionless as a needle pierced his arm. A monitor beeped. Time code 11:14 a.m. Byron broke the silence. While this autopen signed the document, he said, pointing to the screen, this was happening. Turning to the Secretary of Energy, he asked, "You approved these grants right after this timestamp. Did you see the president that day?" The secretary hesitated. "No, I received the document digitally." "It had clearance from who?" "Wait, I believe the office of the First Lady." Gasps spread through the room like static. Jill remained unfazed. Byron approached, folder in hand, calm and deliberate. "Mrs. Biden, did you authorize your husband's signature on a $14 billion package while he was medically sedated?" Leaning forward, Jill's voice was icy. "I authorized the continuation of government. My husband was elected to lead, and when he couldn't speak, we ensured his vision endured." Byron raised an eyebrow. "So, you forged his signature?" She snapped louder, "No, we didn't forge anything. We facilitated. The country doesn't pause because of a bad medical day." "A bad day?" Byron interrupted sharply. "The man couldn't form a sentence, and you distributed billions like Halloween candy." Jill stood abruptly. "We did what was necessary. The alternative was you, and we refused to let that happen again." A heavy silence fell like an axe until a voice from the back, deep, measured, and familiar, spoke. "Trump." He stepped forward slowly, flanked by aides, and approached. "No one voted for you, Jill," said the microphone. She turned, her expression unreadable. "You signed for a man who couldn't even hold a pen. You approved funds he couldn't pronounce. And you used a machine." He nodded at the screen, pretending the Republic still had a voice. He looked around the room. They didn't just sign away documents, they signed away consent. People believed they had a president, but all they had was a puppet. He turned to Byron. "Play it again." And they did, repeatedly. The footage repeated, the signature, the sedation, the silence, until no one present, Democrat, Republican, staffer, or citizen, could deny the truth. No memo could justify this. No press release could fix it. And no apology could undo $93 billion. Trump stepped away from the microphone. Byron closed the folder. The scandal finally had a face, Jill. Byron Donalds paced outside the Oversight Committee chamber, clutching the file, his jaw tight as stone. The folder was thick with evidence, testimony, timelines. But the key point was clear, this was not carelessness, it was deliberate. Trump, dressed sharply, his eyes colder than usual, approached. "Do you have enough?" he asked. Byron didn't hesitate. "Enough to dismantle half a political dynasty. Video timestamps, digital signatures, Jill Donnellan, the entire scheme." Trump nodded once. "Ready to go nuclear?" Byron snapped the folder shut. "I already filed the petition, formal request for a congressional hearing, full subpoena power, names on the record." Trump smirked. "And the speaker approved it 20 minutes ago." The vote was unanimous. His grin faded. "This is it. They've pulled Joe out as a puppet. Now we expose everything." Byron lowered his voice. "May 21st, the nation will see it all." Cameras were rolling. The gallery was packed. No movement, no whispers, just the tense stillness before democracy erupted. At the center stood the Speaker of the House, gavel in hand, eyes sharp like a surgeon before making the first cut. "This hearing is now in session," his voice rang clearly. "The purpose today is to establish factual accountability for the disbursement of $93 billion in federal energy loans during the last 76 days of the previous administration. We will find out who signed, who approved, and who profited." A pause. "And whether the President of the United States was fit to sign anything at all." He set the gavel down. You may proceed, Congressman Donalds. Byron rose, steady and confident, no notes in hand. Mr. Secretary, to begin, can you confirm under oath that $93 billion in Department of Energy loans were issued in the final 2.5 months of the Biden administration? The Secretary of Energy adjusted his mic, a bead of sweat catching the light. Yes, that number is correct. Were all recipients required to submit a business plan before receiving approval? They were encouraged to. Encouraged? Byron repeated, not required. There was an expedited process due to timing and transition pressures. Not every case was fully documented. Let me be clear, Byron said, voice tightening. You sent out $93 billion, and in many cases, you didn't even require a spreadsheet. I never said that. Byron stepped closer. 7 companies had no profit history, no asset registry, no EINs. One even listed a Weebly page as its main contact. The secretary swallowed hard. You moved more cash in 76 days than the department did in 15 years. No one answered, so he asked again, did the department verify that all recipients had the ability to receive, manage, and deploy multi-million-dollar federal loans? The secretary glanced sideways. The room held its breath. Not comprehensively, came the response. Byron nodded. There it is. He addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just reckless spending. It's institutional negligence, signed and sealed by a pen whose owner was never present. I will lock eyes with the secretary one last time and say, before this hearing ends, we will find out who actually signed for it. The chamber was still unsettled from that exchange when Stacey Abrams was sworn in. She didn't appear shaken, she looked prepared for battle. Byron leaned forward. Ms. Abrams, under oath, can you explain why your organization received $2 billion in federal funds labeled as energy equity infrastructure, which audits suggest was actually used for a voter registration campaign? Abrams smiled, unfazed. We were funded to uplift underserved communities through renewable energy access and civic engagement. Civic engagement? Byron echoed. So, solar panels and voter ballots? Abrams didn't flinch. What you call ballots, I call empowerment. Maybe that frightens you. What frightens me is $400 million going to counties with no power grid, no infrastructure, no oversight, and no population. She raised her voice. Those counties were redlined, neglected, and abandoned by people like you. The audits reveal contractors submitting fake invoices and duplicate addresses because your party refused to fund real infrastructure in our communities, so we built our own. Whose money? Byron asked flatly. Taxpayers or donors? Abrams leaned forward, eyes locked with his. If you want to put me on trial for helping people keep their lights on and register to vote, fine. But call it what it is, a political witch hunt, a vendetta because I proved a black woman from Georgia could build power without your permission. Byron held up the EPA funding report. You didn't build power. You bought influence. Your organization fast-tracked funding through a direct line to the White House while the president was incapacitated and the First Lady acted as chief of staff. Stacey laughed, bitter and sharp. You don't care about oversight. You care about control. Every time our side fights back, you just change the rules. I didn't break the system, I learned how to use it, just like you. Byron stayed calm. You want to fight corruption by becoming it? That's not justice. That's careerism disguised in a protest t-shirt. He stepped closer, one hand on the lectern. You're not here because you help the poor. You're here because $782 million of that $2 billion remains unaccounted for, no receipts, no audits, no trail. But we traced it to fake LLCs, dormant mailboxes, and donors linked to your last campaign. She stood. I'm not apologizing for organizing black voters. No one's asking you to, Byron said coldly. We're asking why a community center in Jenkins County received $18 million for a solar project in a ghost town. Silence fell, then murmurs. Byron scanned the room. This isn't about race. It's about math. The numbers no longer favored her. The room darkened as the evidence screens powered down, but the tension remained. The inquiry now centered on two individuals who had never run for office but had effectively governed behind the scenes, Mike Donnellan and Jill Biden. To their right sat Annie Tomasini, her expression as stoic as marble. To their left was Anthony Bernal, tense like a defense attorney in a hopeless case. Facing them stood Byron Donald, calm but sharp, clearly fed up with the pretense. He stepped forward slowly, speaking with a crisp tone. Mr. Donnellan, during the last 76 days of the Biden administration, who was responsible for making the actual decisions on disbursements? Not press releases or delegation memos. Who signed the orders? Donnellan replied without hesitation, the president. Byron tilted his head. Which president? Silence. You led 5 internal meetings and sent out at least 4 executive memos. The president wasn't present at any, yet each was followed by a loan release within 48 hours. I coordinated those, Donnellan said. That's not illegal. It's my job, he added. Byron leaned in, voice sharper. Then why do those memos bear the initials JD, which your own staff says belong to you, not the president? Donnellan sat up straighter. That's shorthand used by staff. It doesn't prove who wrote them. Explain this, then. Byron threw a printed email onto the desk, from Donnellan's assistant to the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. We've secured Jill's sign-off. POTUS won't be able this week. Use the autopen. The room tensed. Donnellan remained calm. Autopen is legal under federal rules. The signature counts. From the second row, Trump spoke quietly but firmly. It's not about legality, it's about intent. All eyes turned as Trump rose and approached the microphone uninvited. Autopen is for presidents stuck on Air Force One, not bedridden in a hospital. You weren't running a government, you were staging a show. Jill Biden finally broke the silence, leaning forward. We were maintaining continuity. The president was lucid enough to review decisions, and when he wasn't, we safeguarded his policy vision. Byron raised an eyebrow. Policy vision? You approved $93 billion based on a vision, no meetings, no signatures, no confirmed input from the elected commander-in-chief. Jill sat up straight, firm. He gave us guidance. You think Joe Biden was some kind of vegetable? He was battling fatigue and treatment but thinking more clearly than many here. Trump crossed his arms, expression hard. He missed every security briefing for 3 weeks. Didn't meet with the cabinet. His doctor said he couldn't focus for more than 90 seconds. You didn't protect him, you impersonated him. Donnellan interrupted, voice rising. We followed procedure. You're spreading conspiracy theories because you lost control of the bureaucracy. Byron stepped closer. Procedure doesn't cover fake press appearances or forged timestamps. It doesn't cover video loops and staged lighting while Jill stands next to an unresponsive man and waves to the press. Jill's voice cut sharply through the room. So now it's my fault for loving my husband and protecting his dignity? No, Byron replied coldly. It's your fault for abusing that trust. While you smiled for 5-minute clips, your team used his name to approve billions while he lay sedated. Laws were signed under his name. You didn't love him, you used him. The room fell silent as Jill stood, shaking with rage. You call it abuse, she said. I call it leadership. You stayed outside. I stood inside that White House every single day while my husband battled pain and memory loss. I held this country together while the rest of you waited for the cameras to catch him faltering. Trump stepped forward, his tone subdued. No one elected you, Jill. Her eyes locked onto his. No one elected your ego either, she shot back, and yet here we are. Byron's voice remained calm. Mrs. Biden, if you had served strictly as First Lady, your presence wouldn't be in question. But you authorized executive decisions, scheduled cabinet meetings, and approved federal grants using a mechanical signature pad. He moved closer, his voice sharp. You weren't a caretaker. You became a usurper. Donnellan slammed his hand on the table. This is a circus. Unfazed, Byron turned to the clerk. Play the recording. A hidden microphone transcript played. Donnellan's voice from December 2024 filled the chamber. We just need him awake for the footage. 5 minutes. Then we take care of the rest. The pen signs. The staff clears it. Jill's voice replied with a nod. That's governance now. Jill's breath hitched. The room held still, utterly quiet. Trump lowered his head and murmured into the mic, almost as if confiding, governance by nod. America deserved better. No one responded. Not even the Bidens. The atmosphere, already tense, shifted again, this time to stillness. The chairman of the House Oversight Committee rose slowly. He didn't touch the gavel. He didn't need to. What was about to unfold would shatter every remaining pretense. He cleared his throat, his voice low but resonant. Members of the committee, you've heard testimony, reviewed documents, and scrutinized signatures. He motioned toward 2 monitors above. Now, you will witness the moment one of those signatures was created. The lights dimmed. On the left screen, the official authorization for $14 billion in federal funds to 13 green development firms. At the bottom, a bold signature, Joseph R. Biden Jr. timestamp, January 10, 2025, 11:14 a.m. On the right screen, security footage from the president's private East Wing medical suite. The silence in the room became almost physical. The feed began. President Biden lay unconscious in a hospital bed, eyes closed, a blanket up to his chest. A nurse adjusted in 4-line. The monitor beeped steadily. A timestamp matched the previous one, January 10, 2025, 11:14 a.m. An off-screen voice announced, administering morphine now. Another camera angle. The executive signing room. Same timestamp. A mechanical pen pressed down, signing Joseph R. Biden Jr. A hand reached forward, Jill Biden's, removing the signed document from the tray. The screens froze, left, the signature, right, the sedation. In between, Jill's hand. The chairman spoke with measured force. At the exact moment that signature was recorded, President Biden was under medical sedation for severe pain. Our investigation confirms he was unconscious, incoherent, and incapable of reviewing or authorizing any document. He looked directly at Jill. And the person who physically activated the autopen was you. The room fractured into a deafening silence. Jill sat frozen, staring at the image of her own hand over the signature line. Mike Donnellan looked away, his jaw tight. Even he had no defense. The chairman continued without raising his voice. There are moments in history when facts speak louder than power. This is one. He gave a single nod. This committee finds that $14 billion in taxpayer money was authorized using false legal authority, signed not by a conscious president, but by a machine triggered in silence. He sat back. The people of this nation deserve honesty. And they deserve signatures written by conscious, accountable hands, not machinery acting in secret. For once, Jill Biden said nothing. The room had changed. It now resembled a courtroom in the final seconds before a verdict. No arguments remained. Only the truth, and its weight. The chairman stood again, gripping the podium as if bracing the institution itself. His voice was quiet, but it carried gravity. Under full authority of the House of Representatives, this committee issues its formal finding. The room leaned forward. After weeks of investigation, after reviewing hundreds of documents, sworn statements, internal communications, and direct video evidence, he looked toward the witness table. The Oversight Committee confirms the following. He unfolded a sheet of paper, the words landing like hammer strikes. First, an autopen was used to approve over $93 billion in federal disbursements while the president was medically incapacitated. Second, we have verified financial connections between the beneficiaries of those funds and political organizations associated with the former First Family and senior White House staff. Third, we have time-stamped surveillance footage showing President Biden receiving sedatives at the exact moment his digital signature was used to approve $14 billion in federal loans. He scanned the room slowly, carefully. Therefore, under Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 641 for theft of public funds, Section 101 for false statements, and Section 371 for conspiracy to defraud the United States, this committee recommends full criminal referral to the Department of Justice for the following individuals. He read the names like inscriptions in stone. Jill Tracy Biden, former First Lady of the United States. Michael P. Donnellan, former Senior Advisor to the President. Jennifer Granholm, former Secretary of Energy. Then, looking up again, he added, we also recommend the immediate opening of a separate, independent investigation into the Environmental Protection Agency's $2 billion disbursement to organizations connected to Stacey Abrams during the same unauthorized approval period. A pause. This committee has completed its work. The evidence now belongs to the American people. The justice that follows will speak for itself. He sat down. And the silence that followed wasn't shock. It was the hush that comes with finality.